Welcome to the Playtyper Guy podcast. I'm Stephen Robinson. My guest today is Sara Spector, a Midland, Texas criminal defense attorney and a political and legal pundit. Before we start, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. Sara, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I obviously, this is going to be dropping most likely the day before the primary in Texas. It's been, obviously major news. The turnout, at least in early voting, has been somewhat historic or unprecedented, all the words they want to use. And obviously, it is notoriously difficult to poll a state the size of Texas. And some of the polls coming out have sample sizes around this, of my living room, despite being millions, like 300 so people. But Crockett has been consistently leading the polls. And that question kind of comes as to what do you think her chances are compared to James Tallarico? And what does it mean, in your sense, if Crockett does win the primary? And we can get into kind of that sort of impact later based on how the campaign she's run.
So Jasmine Crockett has a very high name recognition because she's been on a lot of national shows. She's made a lot of, for a couple of years now. She's been one of the more photographed Congress people right, and she got in the race late, and so I don't take a lot of stock in the polls. Number one, in Texas, you don't have to be registered with a party in order to vote in their primary. And so a lot of people who normally would vote Democrat in a lot of parts of the state are going to be voting in the Republican primary to have some say in their local elections, because like in Midland, we don't have any local candidates running as a Democrat because they won't win. And I already voted in early voting, and I voted in the Democratic primary. So I don't take much stock in the polls. I think that if you call people, just general people, they're not going to know who James is, and they're going to recognize Jasmine Crockett's name, and I think they're just going to say Jasmine Crockett. Mm-hmm. I also know the size of the polls, or the sample size, have been very small, from what I understand. So at least from what I'm hearing on the ground, and I'm connected to a lot of different nonprofits, political nonprofits. I would be surprised if Crockett won. I would be extremely surprised. But if she does win, if you had asked me this when she got in the race, I would have said all Democrats are going to go for whichever candidate wins. And because she has run, or her team has run, such a divisive campaign, and she's attacked a couple of my friends who are prominent Latina political activists in the state, and have accused them of being racist. And when they have been basically matriarchs, and as far as being people who have sort of opened doors for both women and minorities in television and in politics, they are taking it very personally, and I am taking it personally. I'm not a Latina, but I'm taking it personally because she's accusing, or her supporters, or whoever, paid influencers or whatever, are going after anyone who is supporting Mr. James Tallarico, and they're calling us racist. And from what I'm hearing from people that have been attacked by her people, is that anything from I'm not going to vote for her if she wins, or if she does, I'll vote for her, but I'm not gonna walk the streets for her. I'm not gonna knock doors for her, and I'm not gonna do social media for her.
I've seen it remarked upon by folks that it is a pretty aggressive campaign for given if the polls are correct, right? So if she's like ahead double digits, if her internal polling is showing this, it would be strange that the campaign and the influencers would be doing this. They would be saying, we're going to win, we're going to blow the doors off. Let's obviously not create a situation where because it's going to be an uphill battle anyway to win, even against someone like Ken Paxton. So let's just, kumbaya our way to the primary victory and get everyone behind us.
Well,
It
and she has
just,
so much positive. Like, to me, she has so much to campaign on as far as her what she's accomplished and all that she's done. She has so much positivity that she could campaign on, and James. I mean, I know he's not a national name right now, but as far as statewide, he really has. We all knew for a long time that he was going to be a statewide candidate. He's a very good, especially in person and at retail politics. And if James doesn't win this race, we certainly have hopes for him in the future. And so it isn't good to run this device. At least I don't think for the Democratic Party to run a negative campaign against another Democrat, because it may be used against him in the future if he does lose.
and the name recognition issue is also compelling to me because in the past, if you are trying to flip a seat in a state that's consistently for decades votes against your party, you actually don't want a sort of national, you don't want the race to be nationalized. So past candidates, um, I would say John Ossoff in Georgia and Raphael Warnock, they were known in their states. I don't think they had a national brand prior to that, and for good reason. I think in many cases, and there are other arguments as to why, but I think that definitely hurt Stacey Abrams, especially the second time she ran for governor. Because if you nationalize it, then obviously it's going to fall upon party lines, and I've often compared it to um, Lauren Boebert. If she ran, she would have a sort of a name recognition in Colorado, right? If she ran statewide, she would probably be the worst possible statewide candidate, even in the worst year for Democrats to try to flip the state. But when I bring that up, I think a lot of Democrats are reticent to make that comparison or to even acknowledge that Texas is as right wing as Oregon, where I live, is Democratic leaning. They fundamentally seem to believe that there is an untapped reservoir of non-voters who lean left, and just Crockett just needs to get out the base. I want to ask you about that because it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Are you seeing anything on the ground that Crockett is doing that would be different than what Harris or Biden had done in the past to win over these non-voters or anyone, frankly? I mean, you know, she's essentially standard Democratic figure, right?
So as to Crockett, no, I don't. As to Talrico, he is. Yeah.
Yes. But and
But
and that's interesting because I've seen again from the same folks, they are being upset that he's doing that. Like he's not running on everyone who's MAGA is irredeemably evil. He's doing stuff that's like classic, Obama style, like we're all the United States of America and whatever. And instead it's like, no, 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 that's ridiculous. And I've seen this from people I respect online. They are freaking out, like when he said that we can help MAGA to get a more recent speech. A lot of folks were like, "This is like what? They're all white nationalists and terrible." And it's like, but this is a state Trump won by double digits.
I live in Midland, you know, so it's very, it's a republic. It's one of the biggest Republican strongholds in the country. My precinct, I think, gave number three in the nation as far as contributions to Trump in the past two elections.
Hmm.
So I live among people, and I'm an open Democrat. There's another candidate that's running a very similar campaign. He's down ballot, and his name is Clayton Tucker, and he's running for agriculture commissioner in Texas statewide. He doesn't have a Democratic opponent, and he's going to get the nomination. He's been running, coming to rural areas because he's a farmer, and he's really doing well. And I got him into a very conservative talk radio um, show here in Midland. Who I'm friends with the guy who does the show every morning for his 4 hour show, and he did it, and he did very well. And the the host of the show, who's very MAGA, was very impressed with him, and said, you know, if I have anybody else that might want to be on the show. James came to Midland this weekend on Sunday, and I got um, I got approached on Monday by an elected official um, who had never spoken to me in the courthouse, and had never addressed, like, I didn't have a personal relationship with him. And he literally made a beeline for me as soon as I walked in the courthouse. And he was like, how'd your friend do? Um, and I said, what? I didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, your Tallarico, how did he do on Sunday? And I said, well, you know, we had a large, huge turnout, very little advertising, and people I'd never seen before that I didn't know who they were. And I know most of the Democrats here in Midland. And he goes, I like him. And I said, yeah, he's a nice guy. And I said, I can't say the same about Paxton. And he goes, no, I can't either. And I said, so are you going to vote for Paxton? And he said, no. And I said, would you vote for Tallarico? And he goes, I can't tell you that. I don't want to say anything.
Hmm.
So, and then yesterday when I was leaving the office, the radio station is in our building. Again, a beeline for me from the owner, MAGA. I'm telling you, this guy is so right wing MAGA radio host. And he came in and he goes, I'd like you to come on next week and talk about Tallarico, and it's not going to be ugly. So I've never seen anything like this.
Hmm.
I've never seen anything like this. And Jasmine's just running. I mean, honestly, I mean, it's not a normal campaign, because Harris really did try to do. I mean, she tried. She is a moderate. You know, Harris a moderate. She's an ex prosecutor. I feel the biggest mistake on her part, at least when she ran against Biden in the first time in the primary, her biggest mistake wasn't embracing her AG background, embracing her prosecutor background, embracing, you know, law enforcement background, because I'm an ex-prosecutor. And she went way too far left, and they used it against her when she ran
Hmm.
again.
Hmm.
But I think she, you know, I don't understand. Like, we're almost positive. I mean, I can tell you that whole Colin Allred, whatever that was, when he made a remark about James calling him a moderate. I think he said moderate black man, moderate
Mediocre black man.
mediocre black man.
But he said the campaign was mediocre. He didn't actually. That's what
But that's not what
Tallarico.
Colin claims. Tallarico claims it was immediate. That's what he said. But Colin said that's not what he said.
Hmm.
And it was through a third person podcaster, I don't know, media influencer. And I'm just like, and I know he had Jasmine's okay when he did that. And first of all, I know James personally. He's too good of a politician to say that to anybody, even if he thought it. And I know he didn't think it. And everyone everyone on the ground as far as when Colin ran. It was a huge disappointment because he didn't get out there and campaign at all. And mediocre. Everybody is saying if you're calling that campaign mediocre, it's generous,
Yeah.
and he so. uh, I don't really understand. I don't understand this scorched earth campaign that that Jasmine is running. I
Sure.
don't understand it. I don't
Yeah.
comprehend.
Well, I've spoken to some folks, and one thing that came up, and it's been fascinating to me, given, and we'll get to this, was it's become this weird proxy battle for representation for the Democratic Party. And for people who, after Harris lost, they're feeling that, oh, the party now believes that women of color or minorities or queer people can't win elections. And so it has to be a party of, and a friend of mine had even posted this of like white guys in flannel forever, though that arguably more Graham Plantner than Tallarico. Um, and I think there's this, I'm not sort of minimizing the emotion or the concern about that or feeling that you're not going to be represented by the party anymore, able to run. But this example just seems the worst one for it because the idea that, and Crockett has said this, oh, when they talk about electability, it's all about my race. But she's running a campaign that could not in any way win Texas. I will say bluntly, not that I am not. I'm somewhat skeptical of anyone doing so. But there's a reason Doug Jones, even against a pedophile, was able to win because was perceived as a moderate. He connected with
And
folks
law enforcement.
and law enforcement, and
So in Texas, at least from I have, again, a lot of people. I know a lot of people that voted for Trump the first time and the second time, first time and then didn't vote for him the second time. I, I think so. So the last Biden Trump election or Harris Trump election, uh, there was a huge voter decline at Midland. Midland's a pretty they vote people vote in Midland, and there was a drop in Democratic turnout and also a huge drop in Republican turnout. And Midland's a very educated community. When I go pick a jury in Midland, it's the most educated jurors I ever have. It's unusual not to have 80% of the jurors having college. I'd even say most of them have postgraduate degrees. We have a lot of petroleum engineers here, teachers, professors. It's a very educated community. The people that work the oil fields tend not to register here. They're mobile and they usually are from somewhere else. So we have a very highly educated community here, and um, uh, I know because I am. It's hard for people to be um, openly Democrat here in Midland because they're scared they're going to be economically affected. Like people won't shop at their, or they won't
mhm,
use you. And I have not had that problem. I'm very successful here at, even though, and I've been, and the thing is, I'm a part of the community, right? I work on nonprofits with MAGA, with Republican people, and we build things together here. And they know I'm a human being, and then I'm not a caricature of a liberal, right? And so they the people and then because I'm a lawyer too, I'm really good about keeping secrets. And people call me in confidence. People who are prominent in our community, and in the past since Trump has been elected, especially in the past 6 months, I have been told that they regret their vote and
mhm,
they're scared for our country. And so I think there's an opening here. I don't, because Trump is just not doing what he ran on. I mean, a lot of people voted for him because he was isolationist and they're sick of wars, and
mhm.
that's not happening. And the oil industry is not doing well at all. We're not drill baby drill, and And unfortunately, Democrats won't embrace that. They won't talk about that because it's petroleum industry, blah 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 blah. But the petroleum industry is not going anywhere. And if and the fact is Midland's not doing well since Trump got elected because of the tariffs mostly. It's that's what I and there's it's in the Midland Reporter Telegram. There's they write about oil. It's in the Wall Street Journal. The tariffs have negatively affected the oil industry in Midland, especially the domestic. And so we're not doing well. And so what this is a really good time in Texas for a moderate Democrat, right, to possibly win. And uh, the other thing about Texas that that I don't think the Democratic bubble quite understands is, and I think Mayor Pete understood it, um, but it's people are religious here, right? And I'm religious. I'm Jewish, I'm religious, and it is appealing to have an ordained James is an ordained minister,
Mm-hmm.
and he integrates. And I love all religions. I believe that the teachings of a lot of religions you learn from it, and he takes a lot of biblical teachings and Jesus's words, and he runs on that. And
Mm-hmm.
and there's a part of the Democratic Party that really frown on that.
Oh yeah.
And I don't see why. I think that if I can respect your atheism or your agnostic beliefs, you can respect my religious beliefs. And I think that even if you're agnostic or atheist, you I don't understand how you don't respect someone's religious. If somebody is grounded in religion and faith, um, I think we all have something that needs to ground us and make us
Yeah.
soul search
I
and all that. And I think that you have to respect if you come from a world of religion or are grounded in it, you've got to respect that where James is coming from. And it's a so I just I would think Jasmine would understand. I don't know her religious upbringing, but at least most Black people in my community, they're very religious, and
mhm.
and and, and that's the other thing is that my Black friends are as far as that are there's it's unreal, but there's a Black church here that has a lot of members that is very MAGA. Don't even get me
Yeah.
started. But there's
It's
also
Texas.
yeah, but then there's also the community that isn't. And but the people I know of color that don't live in Houston, that don't live in Dallas, or even the ones that do, most of them are religious. They're Baptists. They go to church every Sunday, and they're very, I'd say, the most conservative part of my friends are of the Democratic movement.
Oh yeah.
And so they like James.
What frustrates me somewhat about this race and so what I'm seeing in some of the rhetoric is that it often seems as if the Democratic Party, even now, and particularly Crockett's campaign, they're pitching to me. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm
Yes,
college educated. I'm not particularly religious. I work in the arts. Look behind me. My culture, and not people that and to me the big tent is like James is doing what he should be doing to reach the people in Texas, this particular culture. And I've seen people say that they find him bringing up religion off-putting to them. Why is he doing that? He shouldn't talk about religion, which is a weird way to
it is weird.
campaign in Texas. They talking about how dare he say anything negative about Biden and immigration. But when that was one of the key reasons we lost, but there's a lot of
Correct.
denial about why Democrats lost in 2024, that it was not a policy issue. It was all just that everyone's racist, which is just not realistic. And so, the stuff that I'm seeing, so that becomes an electability issue. Then it's like, oh, you just support some white savior. I see that a lot. And I
I
think you've
mean,
gotten a lot. And it's like, no, even if Tallarico were black or Latino, he should be saying, okay, I have issues with how the party handled immigration. I have issues. You need to distance yourselves from the national party. You would That's how you're going to flip not just red states but purple states, right?
Yes.
Means that, like, to me, I would need to hear when I talk about electability, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would need to hear stuff that would annoy me from the candidate. Frankly, I'd have to hear the candidate say, I'm going to have a position different from Stephen Robinson, maybe on guns, on immigration, on certain issues that I'm differing from the national party to win statewide. Because if you're just running as a bog standard, Stephen Robinson approved liberal, like that just seems a fantasy. It seems this fantasy that there's all these people like me in these states that you can, and the demographics show that's not the case. You can just turn them out and we don't have to change. And that to me seems larger than this race, because people want to write off Texas. Crockett famously said, what's the harm? Because if you think Texas can't be flipped, why not get behind me? It's like, well, to me, the concern is just that Democrats are just going to not try to just say that we're just going to run on a national
So
platform.
there is a harm. So right. So when Beto lost the first time for the Senate, he the positive part of his campaign was down ballot. We flipped a lot of districts, right? And at the very least, we want people to come out in the suburbs, which are the flippable districts, I think, and vote. And we don't want a supermajority, which we have right now in Texas. And when we have a person at the top of the ballot that either isn't trying or didn't do a whole lot of work, like Allred, I felt like Allred hurt down ballot candidates because he didn't campaign with them. Like Beto went all over, and when he showed up, the down ballot candidates would be right next to him on stage, and people would know they're down ballot candidates, right? And it had this effect where actually James came in on Beto's coattails, right? He came in as a state rep and flipped Williamson County, which was historically red. And so it has a negative effect on places that could flip, even if we don't flip statewide. And it's baby steps, right? And we went backward with Allred because he just people. I do believe people just did not show up. They were not excited. They didn't know Harris. Number one, she had 2 or 3 months to campaign. It was so horrible, and I think people were left with a choice. Do I don't. It was kind of like I don't want if it's like if Clinton's they were. I remember when we had Clinton or Bush in the White House, Clinton or Bush, and then when Hillary ran Clinton, I think people were tired of Biden or or Trump. I think that they were tired of both choices and they just sat home.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people. So Texas still has a lot of misogyny. It does. Um, and I think that I think that it's harder for a woman to run. I think anywhere. I think that it's just hard. I think America
Hmm.
has a lot of misogyny. I just look at Klobuchar when she ran for that first when she ran for president. I guess and it was against Biden. The first this first time there was an article that came out in the New York Times that she was a really mean boss and she was making people get forks for her and she ate off a comb and I'm like, what? You don't. And then they did that again with what's the name of the lady with the whiteboards in California? I can't.
Katie Porter.
Yeah. Oh, she's mean, and she's a mean boss. And I'm like, you don't hear that. You don't hear that about. I haven't seen an article like that about a male political candidate. He's a mean boss. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I learned early on when I was a litigator that I can't be aggressive in the courtroom. I have to tone it down because then they use the B word on me, and that's all they see.
Hmm.
And and I mean, and I've read a lot in my time a lot of Gloria Steinem, and she breaks it down pretty well. And she believes that the biggest problem with the unelectability of women in this country is because women don't form as much of a team as men do. They don't. We don't stick with each other. We compete with each other, whereas men, they don't. They're it's more of a brotherhood. And so my biggest critics, like when I go in the courtroom, are female jurors. They critique my clothes, they critique my looks, they can, and so it's just Texas. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a different place. It's very you have to. It's just a different place, and
Mhm.
Ann Richards. When I was when I was in college, I interned at the state capitol,
Wow.
and she was at the time the state treasurer. And I'd see her, and there weren't very many women in the state capitol at the time. I mean, there just as far as anywhere, like from aides anywhere down, it was a very male dominated place. And I remember Anne always dressed to the T's, always dressing her makeup perfect, her suit, and such a lady. I found out that now after her death that she was very in private kind of a potty mouth person, but she knew how to hold herself out in public to where she didn't offend people, and she was very motherly. Like she didn't know me from Adam, and she'd see me running around. She's like, "Are you okay, honey? Is everything good?" Almost in a motherly way. um, and she was a fantastic politician. Jasmine, she's for whatever. I like her brand. She's sassy and she's smart, and I like that she fights back. I don't know how that will read in Texas, but I wish she had not. I honestly believe, and talking to other female people in the state who are actually more professional, like they're in politics professionally. Um, there's a race war going on now between Latinos, whites, and blacks in the Democratic Party, and
Yeah.
it's been ignited.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I would think attacking Latino women is not the best way, just, morally, but also just numbers wise, because
I mean, Texas,
Texas is not Georgia.
Texas
So
is mostly Latino.
yeah, those
I mean,
comparisons don't add up, and they tend to, the Latinos. I'm not seeing that particular outreach. And what you were saying about women kind of aligning, it's disturbing to me, especially on certain influencers and certain folks who are fans of Kamala Harris. There's been a sense of, okay, well, anyone who we will immediately turn on particular white women or Latino women if they stray out of line necessarily, and rather than kind of like a coalition and maybe let's have our internal discussion. The Republican Party tends to do that. What Allred did, I felt, was something. I like you could have had video of a Republican on the Epstein jet with a mic, and you're not going to have like actual video, and he's not going to go on and bash this person, and to have already basically state, as you said, an up and comer in the state to state that he's a racist on a secondhand account is really alarming, just politically speaking. Also, because Republicans will call it out as BS, because if Crockett wins and Tallarico then endorses her and campaigns for it, they'll be like, "Oh, that's all BS. Like you just said that to win, and now you want the guy you called a racist to go and help you." So that's always like there's not a lot of thought to
James,
me that I'm
James
seeing as to
stumped
long
for him.
term.
James stumped for him in the Senate race. James was all over the state stumping for Allred. I just, so I mean, I I am overly nice. Like with Harris, I refuse to publicly criticize anything she did because she was in such a bad position, and I would still to this day will not look back on her campaign and say she did anything wrong because she was put. I think she did the best that she could do in the
Sure.
position that she did, and I think she did a marvelous job. I really do. And she couldn't really say anything about Biden because she was still the VP.
Hmm.
And what the heck, she's put in a really bad position. And I mean, we all make mistakes, and I think that, like, I've seen Clinton and Bush talk about George W. Bush talk about 9/11, and Clinton has taken a lot of responsibility, as well as Bush, in the lack of transition, between their after he became when they were transitioning from his presidency to George W. And they feel like because it was not a very good transition, 9/11 was more likely to happen. And so I know George W. Team said they were much more, um, they did everything they could with Obama to make sure, at least with security and all that, they all coordinated together to make this country safe. So they said what they did wrong. You're going to do stuff that you regret or that you wanted to do better, as in any job. And so to criticize Biden, it's okay. I think it's okay. I think that
Hmm.
it's okay to look back and say, look, maybe he should have done a better job on the border. Um, he should have done a better job.
Yeah.
But I just, I honestly, I mean, I read a lot. I try to, I love politics. I've loved it all my life, and I don't really know what she's running on. I don't know what she's running on. I don't know what her platform is still. I
Mhm.
still don't know what her point is.
Well,
And
it seems to be very anti-Trump, right? And I don't
so
know if that's sufficient in this elect. Even if Trump is doing, as
I
you were
don't know how
saying,
far to
if
go.
you go with at least target the areas where he's not delivered, right? So
Like
you say
oil.
like oil and others, and run like a Texan and saying here's where he didn't, and here's where I'm going to deliver, and here's where I'll distance myself from the
And
party.
and
But I
also
mean, I'm not seeing. I'm
appeal
not
to
seeing that.
appeal to these people who go to church every Sunday. I mean, I know in Midland, I mean, ever since this whole ICE stuff started, I mean, everyone in Midland did not think. I knew it was going to happen. I absolutely predicted that they were going to go after non criminal people who just work here, who are not here legally, and even some that are here legally. And they raided our tortilleria um, several months ago. And I mean, people in the oil field were writing. I mean, I've never seen, like, putting things on Facebook. Like, the only thing they were guilty of was making the best barbacoa in Midland. And then so our restaurants are suffering. And then we have, we have a building industry here that relies upon, unfortunately, undocumented people. And they just raided some roofers that were building a home here in Midland, and they took fire trucks and grabbed them off the roofs, and none of them had records, and they're
Mhm.
deporting them. And it's trickling. I mean, and James's message, because these are our neighbors, these are people that have never heard us in the community. James's message of, love thy neighbor, and kindness, and things that we hear in synagogue or church every day is resonating. It's resonating because people do feel bad.
But even accepting their argument that she maxes out the black, she does Assad numbers with black voters in Texas, and I've seen some of her supporters say, "Well, what if and Latinos don't show up in large numbers, which is concerning to try to premise your victory on that. They don't turn up
Terrible.
in long numbers, and maybe white suburbanites just are so afraid of Paxton. That just seems a lot of House of Cards to me. I don't, I so
I
I
just don't know why she had to try to destroy James. I mean, we all love James so much. And it has hurt. I mean, he's such a sweet person. He's not going to say anything negative. And I know I mean, I ran for local judge here a lot when Trump ran the first time because I felt like, well, it was when Trump ran the second time. Sorry, when he, I felt like, I felt like, I felt like I just needed to do this because I just felt there was so much wrong with his campaign, and as a as a person who is, my grandmother's family, was all annihilated in the Holocaust, and I saw a lot of the warning signs, you know, and I just thought I knew I wasn't going to win here, but I thought I just needed to get out there and knock on doors and say my piece as to why I'm running as a Democrat, and I did, and a lot of people were very sweet to me, but unfortunately, I caught the eye of, Tim Dunn. Do you know that who that is? Tim Dunn is one of the founders of the Christian fascist. I mean, he wants basically Christianity. He's a billionaire here, and he funds the Christian movement, the right wing movement, and he's a billionaire. And he, just attacked me. He got just attacked me personally, and I the thing is, nobody came to my defense. Even my, like, people were scared, and it was degrading, and it was emotionally hurtful to me, physically hurtful to me, and I you can't really defend yourself. You can't say, oh no, I'm not this, I'm not that. It's just, it doesn't, I don't know what you say. And so when people go after James, or there's a woman in Dallas who when I grew up in Waco, she was the, anchor woman for ABC in Dallas, and, there weren't very many women that, let alone women, Latina women that were on TV in those kind of role models. She was a role model to me, and I've become friends with her later in life, and she was attacked. And then another friend of mine was attacked who's in a political position, and they are by Jasmine's team, and they weren't in a place that they could just say, no, I'm not. So I got online, I was like, I'm done. You cannot do this. You are bullies and you cannot do this. And then they came after me, and I'm fine with that because, and I told them, they said, oh, you're going to lose Twitter followers. I don't care. I'm not going to run again. So come after me. My community knows who I am. I was asked, I mean, the irony of it, before they started calling me racist, and like the irony was 2 days before that, I was asked to join here we have a local, it's called, the Negro Professional Women's Association, and they do a lot of, scholarship, opportunities for children in, of color in Midland to get them scholarships. They do a lot of good for our community, and I was the first white woman they asked to join. And I'm just like, and I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to put that online. I don't have to defend myself. My community knows who I am, and, it's just it's just very. I, I, Jasmine could have come out. She sees how divisive it is, and if she tries to distance herself from this, I don't believe it. She could easily come out and say, "Look, I don't think James is racist." She could have come out and said, uh, "These people who are supporting James are not. It's not because of race. I don't believe it's because of race. They just have differences of opinion." To me, but she hasn't disavowed this,
No. Uh,
and
it's
and
very different from
I
how
don't
Obama ran. It's very different from how Obama ran. I know, like, I think famously Geraldine Ferraro, Clinton surrogate, and a lot of Clinton surrogates in 2008 made some comments that were pretty offensive, and he would sort of brush them off or say something about, like, we get into silly season now, and let's talk about the issues and so forth. And I mean, he would never have done anything like the all red comment, and then which Crockett then sort of doubled down on by stating, like, when Tallarico said that this was his statement, very polite, was sort of this is misremembering what I said. She then said, "Oh, it's the black woman who misrepresents things,"
yeah,
which, like, I gotta tell you, Sarah, and I see this even in Portland, Oregon. There are the wokest white liberals who are kind of done with this type of sort of identity politics, this type of like it's not saying that we believe like that racism is over or anything of that, but it's
It's
just
not
like, but the idea of calling people racist for the most absurd reasons, quickly demonizing people rather than kind of trying to like reach common ground. Because to me, when you're using it to end a conversation or to defame someone, it's sort of insulting to sort of the history of this country and the history of others, and it's not moving forward.
I think there could be some really wonderful discussion about, maybe we aren't racist, but sometimes we say things or assume things that we don't know your background or we don't know everything in history, and we could say something hurtful because we're ignorant. But I'm a person who believes in that most everyone has good intentions. They don't set out to be racist, um, I just I just think the best way to be an example, and to make your community better is to be an example and to hold yourself up with dignity and to be kind to people and to try to understand our differences, which is the exact, because I really feel that this all comes down to with Trump, is that there he is aided and abetted by people like Putin who wants to divide our country,
Mm.
and I believe this divisiveness has really hurt our country, um, and America's weaker for it. It's weaker for it, and I love America. I don't love a lot of our history. Obviously, we've done a lot of bad things, but again, our Constitution, I think, was deliberately put in place by our forefathers to try to allow us to get to a place where we are better angels. And I don't understand. Name calling is very juvenile to me. It's a very, and it's not, to me, shows a lack of intelligence. Name calling is something that you do when you're 3 years old. You're mean, you're this, you're that, rather than having a discussion as to why you think somebody is using race
Mm-hmm.
against you. And I obviously,
I'm not seeing a
I,
lot of
I'm white.
persuasion.
I'm white, and my dad, he was very liberal and very progressive, and he said, because we're Jewish and there's, anti-Semitism out there, and he said, but we have the privilege, Sarah, that we don't have to wear a Jewish star, and we can go out and get a job and not mention our Judaism, and no one will know we're Jewish, right? Whereas you can't erase your skin color. It's very, and so it's harder, obviously, and I understand that, but there's this whole thing like, oh, you're white and you're privileged and you shouldn't even have a place in this discussion, or, I mean, I'm
It's the latter that we're seeing a lot of, and I think it's not constructive. And I think it's coming from a lot of those folks who are supporting Crockett. I don't think it's all Crockett supporters, but I do think she, and frankly, the National Party needs to disavow it because it's destructive. That's my opinion. I think. Thank you so much for chatting with me about this race. It's been a great discussion. I really enjoyed following you and reading your work. Look for her online, and thanks for all the
2626 on X.
great and all the great work you're doing on the ground. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you next time. Goodbye.